in baseball, the number one seed, it is a really good battle between in both leagues actually. So I want to talk about this. In the AL, you got New York sitting at 73 and 52. They're 21 games above 500. They won today. Baltimore half a game back at 73 and 53. They currently have that number one wild card. And the Guardians at 72 and 52. They're 20 games above 500. But the Astros are right there. I mean, nobody's running away with this thing. Baltimore, New York, Cleveland, none of them have been all that good. And especially if you look at, I think there's an option where we can find. Can we see? I guess we can't. We can't see since the All-Star break, but none of these teams have been all that good since the All-Star break. They've all kind of been losing, and the Astros are lurking right there. The Astros are sitting there at 68 and 56. They're only 4 games back now. They are only 4.5. I guess they're 4.5 games behind New York, 4 back of Baltimore, 4 back of Cleveland. They now have a 5-game lead in the West. I mean, I remember 2 weeks ago, it was a dead heat between the Mariners and the Astros. Now the Astros have caught fire. They're 9-1 in their last 10. Seattle is 4-6. So 10 days ago, they were tied, and now the Astros are up by 5 on Seattle. That's huge, huge, huge. By the way, the A's have officially surpassed the Angels. But yeah, it is an interesting race for the number one seed because, I mean, right now, the Yankees are up by half a game on Baltimore. They're up by half a game on Cleveland. They're up by 3 on Kansas City, by 3 on Minnesota, by 4.5 on Houston. So that means there are 6 teams surrounded that are within 4.5 games of each other in the American League. What that tells me, this American League is still winnable by anybody. I mean, anybody can get hot and win this conference. Anybody can. The Royals can, the Astros can, the Twins can, Cleveland can. I mean, even Boston's 7.5 back, so they're pretty much out of it by now. But yeah, I mean, Baltimore, New York, Cleveland, Kansas City, Minnesota, Houston, all 6 of those teams are capable of winning the AL, which is crazy to say. I mean, look at Kansas City right now. They've won 5 straight. They are on an absolute heater right now. They've put themselves right back in it. They were tied with Boston a little bit ago in the wild card. They have now put themselves 2.5 games ahead of Boston. Boston lurking around in the wild card conversation, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. They seem like they're going to be a non-factor right now. They're 4.5 back right now of the Royals and Twins, so Boston's kind of in the thick of it. But what's interesting, really, to me, is that none of these teams appear to be on pace to win. I mean, none of them are on pace to win 100 games, and we've talked about that. This is likely going to be the first year in a very long time that there's not been a 100-game winner, right? 2023, the Baltimore Orioles won 100 games, as did the Braves and Dodgers. There was 3 last year. In 2022, we had the Astros, Braves, Mets, Dodgers, so 4. In 2021, Rays, Giants, Dodgers, so 3. In 2019, obviously 2020 was COVID. 2019, Yankees, Twins, Astros, and Dodgers, again, 4. 2018, you've got Red Sox, Yankees, Astros. Okay, so 3. In 2017, you've got Indians, Astros, Dodgers, again, 3. In 2016, you've got Cubs. I guess they were the only one in 2016. In 2015, you had Cardinals were the only one. So we're close. We're close to getting there. 2014, and that's what it was. So 2014, and the best team was the Angels, who won 98. But even 98 would be a far cry, I think, right now in this current landscape. I mean, no team is even on pace to win 97 games. I think the best team right now in 2024, the best winning percentage is Philadelphia at 589. That would put them, let's do the math, on pace for 95 wins. So the best team in baseball is on pace to win 95 games. The last time that happened, we may have to go back even further. Let's see. 2013, the best 97. Okay. 2012, we got a 95, 98. 2011, we've got a 97. 2010, we have a 96. So it's been a very long time since 2010 would be the furthest back you could really go. It's been a long time since baseball has been this much parity. There's been this much parity in the game. Looking at the NL, again, very, very close between that number one seed. The Brewers have pulled right there next to the Dodgers and Phillies, which I did not think I was going to be saying. Look at this. Philadelphia, they're 22 games above 500. They're 73-51. Milwaukee, only a game back now. They're 20 games above 500. They've won 5 straight. They're looking really, really good. They just snuck up on us. Dodgers also 22 games above 500, so they are tied with the Phillies. Phillies have that percentage-wise a little bit better because they've played 2 less games. And then even right there with them again. Padres 3 back, Diamondbacks 4 back. So again, 5 teams in the NL separated by 4 games, and in the AL, you have 6 teams separated by 4.5 games. It is really, really close. There are a lot of teams that are licking their chops right now and saying, if we get hot at the right time, we can easily win this thing. It's crazy the amount of parity there is in the MLB. I'm all here for it. I'm all here for it. We're going to get power rankings in a second, but first I want to talk about some NFL content, so let's move on to that. Yeah, just terrible news coming out of the Vikings camp. JJ McCarthy out for the season. It's only I think it might actually be the first time ever that a first-round rookie quarterback is out for the season before playing a single snap. Obviously sucks. They spent a very high draft pick on him, top 10 draft pick. He was supposed to be the next big thing in Minnesota, but it goes to show. It goes to show why you can't. Not everything is going to be a sure bet. There's so much uncertainty in this league. Perhaps moving on from Kirk Cousins was not the right move. I think Kirk Cousins right now is thinking to himself, "Wow, this is ironic because they didn't want me, and now they're stuck with Sam Darnold." Now I'm not saying Sam Darnold is a terrible quarterback, but we've seen this thing before, right? First round quarterback struggles for the first 3-4 years of his career. He took a year off as a backup. He went to San Francisco last year, didn't play. So he's now in year 6, right? 3 years with the Jets. Then he had that weird year with the Panthers when he started like half their games. Then he goes to San Francisco and sits on the bench. Now this is his last chance. This is Sam Darnold's last chance. And he kind of lucked into it because he was supposed to be backing up / mentoring JJ McCarthy. He was maybe going to start the first few games, but it was never Sam Darnold's job long term. But the track record for quarterbacks who get benched, then sit for a couple years, and then come back and start is not that good. And that's the big thing that we need to focus on here. And we've seen it before. We've seen Teddy Bridgewater do it, right? He wasn't all that good, right? He got benched. He came back. He was a backup. Then he started. Just wasn't great, right? Deshaun Watson took a year off, not because he was a backup, but because of his whole sexual assault case. Comes back, not really the same guy. And there are a lot of cases. Guys like Ryan Tannehill, guys like Sam Bradford, guys like Marcus Mariota last year. It's always a bit shocking to me when teams willingly look at a player and say, well, Mariota got benched by the Titans, but we think he can start in Atlanta, right? Well, Tannehill got benched by the Dolphins, but we think he can start in Tennessee. And sure, Tannehill had the most success out of any of those guys. He stuck around, but Mariota didn't, right? Sam Bradford, he was with Minnesota. He started a year with the Rams, just wasn't any good, right? There's so many cases of this happening. Nick Foles. It happened a couple times to him. Carson Wentz, it happened to. So many cases of guys that they get benched, they sit a couple years, maybe only 1 year, then they get asked to come off the bench. And it's not like a Geno Smith thing where he's had 8 years on the bench. It's no, 1 or 2 years off the bench, come back, and it never works out. It very rarely does it work out. And I don't think it'll work out for Sam Darnold because, again, I don't think he's all that good. I've seen him in New York. I've seen him in Carolina. Neither was he impressive. So chances are the Vikings are now clearly the favorites to finish last in their division, and it's a tough division. It's not an easy division, right? Because Chicago's going to be better with Caleb. The Packers and Lions were playoff teams, so they potentially you're looking at a three-way race for the top level, right? Like the number one seed or the top seed in the NFC North is going to be probably a three-way battle. Maybe I give the Bears too much credit, but I don't know. I think they'll be good. But either way, if you had the Vikings being competitive in 2024 on your bingo card, perhaps not anymore. All right, MLB Power Rankings. Here we go. Bottom of the list. It's the who's who of teams that are terrible. White Sox at 30, Rockies 29, Marlins 28, Angels 27, A's 26. The A's have officially passed the Angels, their highest they've been in a while, but 26 is still not good. Nationals 25, Pirates at 24. The Blue Jays, they really should have sold. They really should have gotten rid of Vlad and Bo Bichette. Blue Jays are at 23. I have the Cardinals at 22. They've been terrible lately. They've been playing their way out of a potential wild card spot. Cubs 21, Reds at 20. Rangers. The record is a bottom 8 team in baseball. I have them at 19. A little bit of respect for a team that won the World Series last year. I still don't think they're any good. Tigers at 18. Rays, who are now a 500 baseball team, at 17. Giants 16. Still in the thick of the wild card race. They're about 4 games behind Atlanta. They could potentially make some noise. Mets are a game back of Atlanta. They are still well in it. They're 15. Mariners at 14. They're 5 games back of Houston. I have them ahead of the Mets because they just swept the Mets like a week ago. So that's a little bit of recency bias, but the Mets do have a better record. Boston is at 13. They are still those are the teams that are on the outside looking in. The top 12 teams are the 12 playoff teams. Atlanta at number 12, the worst of the 12 playoff teams. They are still barely hanging on to that spot over the Mets. Kansas City at 11, barely outside of the top 10. They've been hot lately. The Diamondbacks just got swept by the Rays. Before that, they were scorching hot. They're still a top 10 team. Padres at 9. Man, have they heated up. They are only 3 behind the Dodgers for their division. Twins at 8. Astros, who've won 9 out of their last 10. They're now at 7. They're pushing for a top 5 spot. Brewers, a game back of the top seed in the NL. They are number 6. Guardians at 5. The Orioles 4. The top 3, Yankees, Dodgers, and the Phillies on top. The Phillies do have the best winning percentage in baseball. It's very close. Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies, all right there. Those top 10 teams, man, those top 11, really. All of those 11 teams, from Royals up, any one of them, I think, can win the World Series. I really do. And even the Braves, I think, could. And even Seattle and Boston have such good pitching staff that if either of them found a way to get into the playoffs, they could win the World Series too. It's really close. It's really tight. I love it. I'm all here for it. But that's my quick MLB power rankings for today. I'll have a longer form of this next week. All right, here we go. It's Coast to Coast Sports. Welcome back to the channel. This is the NFL head coach rankings, top 32. I've got Drew with me, and we're going to just go back and forth here. My number 32, Drew, I have the New England Patriots' new head coach, Jerod Mayo.
Yeah, Gerard Mayo. I have him a little bit lower than you do, Levi. And it's because you're going to notice that with my first few guys, I gave the rookie head coaches a little bit of grace. For some of these guys who have losing records, I put behind those type of guys. So my 32 is Dennis Allen, the Saints coach.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I like to put the guys with more experience towards the ahead of the guys who have never done it. The reason I think Mayo is the worst, though, is it's just I don't know what's going on with New England right now. I think that
they don't have an identity. But I think
they are saying they might start a 7th round quarterback instead of the guy they drafted in the 1st round. That doesn't make any sense to me. At number 31, I have Tennessee Titans new head coach Brian Callahan.
Once again, I have Brian Callahan a little bit ahead of you. I got Mr. Bear, Matt Eberflus, in the 31 spot. Again, he's 10 in 24. 10 and 24 in his career. Hey, he's had 3 seasons. Granted, he hasn't had a great quarterback, but hey, this is his year. And you know that as well as I do, Levi, with Caleb Williams at the helm, there's going to be no excuses anymore. So we'll see if Matt Eberflus can get it done. This is probably his last chance.
Yeah, this is make or break for him. Then I have Dave Canales of the Panthers at number 30.
Okay, see, so you go with 3 rookies back to back to back. Once again, I'm in a just different philosophies, I guess.
Yeah.
We're splitting hairs, really, Levi, with these bottom 15 or so. I'd have to say, I have Jonathan Gannon at 30,
Yep.
second year with the Cardinals, 4-13 record. So once again, didn't get it done last year, and because he didn't get it done last year, I'm going to put him behind guys who've never had a chance.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I'm interested to see who you have at 29. Again, I have another rookie at 29, Mike McDonald. My Seahawks,
Wow,
Mike
wow.
McDonald. Yeah, I don't know. I'm putting all the rookies at the bottom right now. They can all have they'll all be able to
Okay.
jump around the list. But I think he is the second best of the new rookie coaches. So that'll cue you in on who I have at 28. But I want to hear your 29 just to see.
Yeah, I got Saleh. I got Robert Saleh from the
Okay,
Jets.
there you go. So that's my four worst returning coaches are your bottom four. So we're basically in agreement.
Yeah,
Slightly different order between the four, but we agree that Dennis Allen, Gannon, Eberflus, and Salah are the four worst returning coaches.
yes. Yes. Okay. So the philosophies are different, but once again, kind of splitting hairs to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Saleh, I mean, 1833. Granted, he's had Zach Wilson. He hasn't last year was a catastrophe as far as the quarterback helm. He did some good stuff with the 49ers as the DC. So we'll have to see what he can do this year. Once again, I think it's probably his last shot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then at 28, I have the last rookie. That's Raheem Morris of the Falcons. So
Yeah, Raheem Morris is a good guy. I have him a few spots ahead of you. At this point, I am going to take a rookie head coach, and it's your worst rookie head coach. So we
okay,
agree
there
there.
you
The
go.
worst rookie head coach is Gerard Mayo of the Patriots. Didn't love the hiring, and I think he's proven it with some of the stuff I've seen out of the training camp over there. Now, granted, he's been dealt a really tough hand over there in New England. It's going to be tough. We're gonna they're a few years away from winning still, so we're gonna have to see if they hold on to a guy like Gerard Mayo because it's going to be more than 1 year before this team has a winning record. Are they going to be the one and done type coach, or are you going to give him a few different chances, like the Matt Eberfluses of the world, the Dennis Allens of the world have given? We'll see.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, 27, I have my first returning coach. It's Matt Eberflus, who you had at 31.
Yes.
So yeah, fairly in agreement there.
Yeah. Yeah. And where are we at? 27 now?
Yeah, 27.
27, I have Brian Callahan.
Okay. And then 26, I've got
Okay.
Jonathan Gannon.
Okay, and then now I have Dave Canales. I like Canales. I thought he was one of the
Yep.
guys for the Seahawks. I would have liked him snacking up. Offensive-minded coach, which I really do love. But once again, rookie hasn't improved much. We'll have to see.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So we both agreed that Canales is better than Callahan, who's better than Mayo. I'm interested to see where you have between Morris and McDonald. 25, I have Robert Sala.
And 25, your question is going to be answered rather quickly, Levi, because it's going to be
Okay.
Raheem Morris
Okay.
for the Falcons.
Okay.
So he obviously has had a stint in the NFL before. He was 21-38, and I think that number kind of scared me away. His career, 17 more losses than wins. Granted, this is his first year with the Falcons. However, he has 3 years prior as a head coach. So we'll have to see if he can turn around the Falcons organization. Falcons are a good football team, though, so no excuse. You should be able to win your division with the Falcons roster in the NFC least,
Yeah.
or not the East, but whatever, the NFC South.
And they are the favorites to win it. My number 24, this is the guy you had at the very bottom. So there's a little bit of discrepancy here. I have Dennis Allen at 24.
Okay.
So I still think he's one of the worst returning coaches, but I have him over guys like Gannon and Eberflus. I don't really know why. I guess I just looked at the Saints record and he hasn't been terrible. He won 7 games, I think, both of the last 2 seasons, but you're right. He has to prove himself this year. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't love Dennis Allen at all. But once again, I'm not going to get mad at you, Levi, for picking the 25th versus the 32nd. It's kind of tomato, tomato. If he wins, he stays in the NFL this year. If he loses, he'll be out, you
Yeah.
know, faster than you can say the Saints don't have a quarterback. So that's kind of where we're at this point. At 24, I have Antonio Pierce from the Raiders. Look, I really like what Antonio Pierce did at the end of last year. He took over a team that, if I don't know, have you watched the show Receiver, Levi, on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
Highly
Unfortunately,
recommend.
don't have that Netflix subscription, but that is a.
Oh,
I've heard it's good.
it's very good. It's a spin-off of Quarterback. Not a spin-off, but it's the sequel. And, Devontae Adams is one of the key guys. And the way that that locker room completely shifted once Antonio Pierce took over the reins over there in Las Vegas, it was absolutely crazy, and they turned into a winning team. With that being said, Antonio Pierce doesn't have much proven. I wouldn't say he's an offensive or a defensive mastermind. I say he's a good players coach who could surprise some people this year. I like Antonio Pierce at 24.
Yeah, and that's what I have Antonio Pierce at 23. So we're not far off. Let's hear
All
your
right.
23.
23, then Mike McDonald now
Okay.
comes into the fold. Look, Mike McDonald, what I really like about him is he is a guy that can bring something elite. And I don't think that guys 24 through 32 can really do that. Mike McDonald is going to bring an elite defense this year in the Seattle Seahawks. I see the Seahawks being a top 10 defense. The thing that is really the question mark is, can Mike McDonald bring it on the offensive side of the ball? If he's able to do that, I think Mike McDonald is going to be an above average coach in his first year in the NFL. We'll have to see if he can do that, though. Also, have to admit, you see the posters behind Levi. Maybe you can see the Mariners here. Definitely a little bit of a homer move for sure, but I do like Mike McDonald. I like the signing.
Yeah. All right. So our bottom 10 are the same 10 coaches, just in a little bit of a different order, but we basically agree. Let's see how much we agree from here. Number 22, I have returning head coach to the Commanders, Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn. I have him a little bit higher than you, Levi.
Okay.
Okay, I got Brian Dable.
Brian Dable at okay, that's fair. I feel like for me, I have Dable ahead just because I saw him win a playoff game with Daniel Jones.
That's true.
Hard to do.
True.
And Dan Quinn, the last time I saw him, his defense got blown out in the playoffs by Jordan Love. So, it's just part of that's some recency bias there. Also, Dan Quinn did get fired, but he also made a Super Bowl, so it's hard to say. Who you got at 21?
21, I got Todd Bowles. I think he got carried to a Super
Yep.
Bowl with Tom Brady. Because he won a Super Bowl, though, still have to give him his flowers. He's 21.
And I have him at 20. And was he the head? I feel like he was the offensive coordinator, right?
Oh, yeah, he was the OC
And
with
then actually he was a DC. And then Arians was that
yeah,
head
he was the
coach.
DC with the Bucks with who was the head coach at that point?
Bruce
It
Arians.
was Bruce Arians,
Yeah.
correct.
So I have
But
him at
yeah,
20. So just one spot off. And yeah, I agree. I think he kind of got carried. He had Tom Brady for the
they had
first
a good
two
defense that
years.
year though.
They did have good defense, but after Arians retired, he had 2 more years with Tom Brady, and they didn't win again in the playoffs.
True.
Yeah. Number 21 for me, I have Shane Steichen of the Colts, and then Bulls at 20.
Yeah, okay, so flip flop. I have Shane Steichen at 20.
Okay,
His
there we
second year
go.
with the Colts. He goes 9-8 last year without Anthony Richardson for the whole year. And I think not
Yeah.
the whole year, but for 2/3 of the year there. So I think that definitely, you have to give him some props there. Look, he kind of made the Colts team interesting,
Yeah.
and you definitely have to give him credit. We'll have to see what he does. Do you think a guy like Shane Steichen, Levi, do you think that, let's say they go 8-9 this year, is he on the chopping block, or do you think he's kind of proven that he's allowed to have maybe 1 or 2 more years with Richardson?
Well, I think he should at least get 2 years with Richardson because last year doesn't really count. I mean,
True.
he won 9 games last year with Minshew as their starter. So
Yes, but like Levi, especially in the NFL, even more so than the MLB or the NBA, everything is so reactionary.
oh yeah.
Everybody wants things to change right away. There's only 17 games. There's way less opportunities for coaches to make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, they're amplified because of the small schedule. I think if the Colts miss the playoffs by, if they only have 6 or 7 wins, it could be his last year. But I do think we're getting to the point where these coaches have a little bit more leniency.
Yeah, I would agree. At number 19, I have Kevin O'Connell of the Vikings.
Wow. Okay, that might be your biggest discrepancy so far.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I'll spoil the fun and say I have O'Connell all the way up at 11.
Wow. Okay.
So,
Yeah, that is our biggest.
yeah.
Yeah, my take on O'Connell was I thought he was really impressive his first year. And then they lost that playoff game to the Giants, and then last year they were just kind of just average. And I don't know. It felt like the gas might have ran out a little bit. But again, I do think
I
that
mean, it ran out because they were throwing out Josh Dobbs for a
it's
few.
true. It's true. I'm
But
interested
yeah,
to see what they do this year. Obviously, no McCarthy. So what's going to be you know, are we going to be watching Sam Darnold for 17 games or
yeah.
Nick Mullins? They still have Nick Mullins. I don't know. Who do you have at 19?
All the way, gotta scroll up on my list here. That's how far separated we are. At 19, I got Mike McCarthy, and
Okay.
that might be a little low for some
Maybe
people.
a little low, yeah.
This is the most tenured coach I have so far, and it's 19. His fifth year with the Cowboys, 18th overall as a head coach. He's won a Super Bowl. He's won 11 games in the playoffs. He has a winning record of 167, 102, and 2. But from what I've seen, Mike McCarthy cannot manage the play clock. And I think that is something that really hurts him. I do. I think that with a roster like the Cowboys, he should have had more playoff success at this point. Look, Mike McCarthy isn't a bad coach by any means, but I don't think he's a good coach.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that I don't think he's a good coach. You'll see where I have him. It's not that much different. So we're generally fairly in agreement. So okay, so we got 18. Now
18.
I have Brian Dable at 18 for the
Okay, now I
Giants.
have Dan Quinn.
And my Dable over O'Connell was I thought that was really a toss up to me because they both had one good year and one bad year, and they both had injured quarterbacks last year. So I purely went based off of the playoff result with the Giants beating the Vikings. So I have Dable at
I like
18,
it.
O'Connell at 19. 17th, this is where I think everyone from 17 and above I view as at least a competent, like successful-ish coach.
Okay.
And so at 17, I have Mike McDaniel of the Dolphins, who he was kind of the NFL's like big hyped new kid
Yeah.
on the block.
Yeah.
Until I thought about it, I was gonna put him higher, and I thought about it. What has he really done? You know, he did win his division after Brady left, but or actually no, he didn't because the Bills stole it from them last year, right? The Bills were behind all season and they won that last game. And you think they can't play in cold weather. You know, they still haven't won a playoff game with him at the helm. All they do is, I mean, they dominate September every year. It's like, oh, Mike McDaniel's, he's so good.
Yeah.
Look at the Dolphins, and then every year it seems like they fall apart. So I have him at 17. I think he's good, but I think he needs to work on, especially late in the season.
Yeah, I'll hold off for where I have Mike McDaniel. I might have fallen
Okay,
subject to his amazing post conferences and the personality that Mike McDaniel brings. But I have Nick Sirianni at 17, the
okay,
earliest or the lowest rated like Super Bowl, like I don't know, NFC champ, I guess you could say, on this list at 17. He's 0-1 in a Super Bowl. He's 34-17 though overall, going into his fourth year. Nick Sirianni, whenever I think of him, I think of his opening day press conference that had the entire city of Philadelphia question why they hired this guy. But I like Sirianni. He's kind of a weird guy. But what he brings to the table is he brings some ingenuity. He brings some folds and wrinkles that not other teams bring. He brought the tush push. I mean, that's huge. For a head coach to allow his 6'3" quarterback that can squat 600 pounds and one of the best centers of all time and really kind of transform the game, you got to give some credit to Nick Sirianni at that point. Why he's at 17 for me and why he's not in like the top 10 is the end of last year. He lost the locker room. Everything started to go downhill after that 49ers loss. And I think you have to really look at that and you have to think what happened there. The locker room was lost. And what's the responsibility of the head coach is to keep that locker room and have guys fight. And they made the playoffs and you didn't think they stood a chance. And I think that's on Sirianni.
Wow, that's interesting. I have Sirianni much higher, and I'll explain my reasoning when we get there. At 16, I have Doug Peterson of the Jaguars. Last year, he was a top 10 coach for me after watching that playoff comeback. And, he does have the Super Bowl win over Brady. But then last season, the Jaguars blew a 4-game lead in their division.
That
They
was
lost, they
crazy.
lost 7 of their last 8. And personally, I think Trevor Lawrence is better than what Doug Peterson has gotten out of him. And he's an offensive individual. He's not someone like there's a direct correlation, I think, between Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. And I thought that was going to be a lot better. So I have him at 16, right in an average. I don't think that he's bad per se, but again, I think that he's maybe losing his touch a little bit. He needs to find a little spark in the Jags.
Yeah, at 16, I have Sean McDermott. And that might come as a surprise for some people, but look, I don't think he's a good coach. I think he's a good coach, but I don't think he's a great coach by any means. I think Josh Allen has carried him a lot of the way. I've seen a lot of, mismanagement of the clock, unable to introduce the run game into Buffalo. I don't love Sean McDermott.
Okay. Again, some disagreements there, and I'll get into that when
Okay.
we get there. At 15, that's where I have Mike McCarthy. So again, just about
Right.
one of the
Yeah.
most average coaches in the NFL. What do you have at 15?
I have Zach Taylor. Might be some recency bias. Might be because Joe Burrow carried him to a Super Bowl, but I think he's a good coach. Look, this is now his 6th year with the Bengals, which is kind of crazy to say, Levi, because I remember his opening game against the Seattle Seahawks,
Yeah,
week 1. Zach
they
Taylor,
almost won that game.
I know. And now he's in his 6th year. And I remember thinking, man, this Taylor guy, like, I don't know how long he's going to last in the NFL. And 5 years later, he's kind of built himself a nice career, largely again. There's a lot of correlation, Levi, between these top 15 or so head coaches and the top 15 or so quarterbacks. So Zach Taylor, he will go in 15. I would love to see at some point in his career play without Joe Burrow. You've seen it before when Burrow's gotten hurt and it hasn't been great. So I would love to see that.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's some discretion there between Zach Taylor and I'll again once when we get there, we'll get there. What are we at? 14? 14, I have Matt LaFleur, which I feel
Oh,
like I
wow.
feel like it's too low.
Wow.
And
That
I
is
even
too
I
low.
even said that when I was making, but I don't know. I don't know how to feel about Matt LaFleur.
Matt
I think that
LaFleur,
his
Levi.
first few years he was carried by Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know. I mean, Jordan Love, he's the highest paid quarterback. Was he carried by Jordan Love last year? I don't know.
No, he was not carried. Okay. Matt LaFleur, you could double LaFleur's losses and it still wouldn't equate to the
It's
win
true.
total
See,
that
I
Matt
don't go
LaFleur
by
has built
record
out.
only. I'm not a record only kind of guy.
Yeah,
Uh,
but he's now proven it with Aaron Rodgers, which duh, obviously Aaron Rodgers is
True.
good. But a guy in Jordan Love, which a lot of people discounted, he brought to the playoffs. Not only brought him to the playoffs, they beat one of the most talented rosters in the NFL in the Cowboys. And I think that's because of Matt LaFleur. Obviously, Love's a part of that, but you have to give LaFleur credit there. Yeah, once again, discrepancies around the board. We'll see where I have LaFleur. Well, let's move on.
Who do you have at 14?
14, I got Sean Payton.
Okay. So,
So,
you'll see where but not a huge discrepancy there.
yeah, I would guess you probably have him in the next few picks. If
Yeah.
not, I would hope you would because
Yeah. So
Payton.
I did give Peyton the nod over the guy I have at 13, which is Harbaugh. So I have Jim Harbaugh at 13.
Mhm. I have Harbaugh much higher.
Okay, so I'm kind of last year I made the mistake of ranking Sean Payton in my top 6, and then he came out and had some, he had it was a first year back learning curve. It felt like he'd taken a few years off, and
Yeah.
I think he'll be better this year. But I think Harbaugh, he's been out of the league for a long time, and yeah, he had a lot of success in Michigan. NFL's a much different league. I expect him to improve, but going into the season, I'm not going to put him in my top 10. I have him at 13. So I think that's a fair ranking.
Yeah, he's had a lot of success at Michigan, Levi. He's also had a lot of
It's
success
true, but it was a
in the
different league back
NFL.
then. It was a very different league back then.
True, but he's, for a large part, the great coaches from that
Yeah.
time are still good now. You look at, the John Harbaughs of the world,
Yeah.
still doing good.
True.
Andy Reid, people like that. Look, I like Jim Harbaugh. I think that because he was in college, you might be putting him a little too low, Levi.
It might be true.
That being
We'll
said,
see.
13. Now I have Doug Peterson. And
Okay, yeah.
yes, they gave up a 4-game lead, but I like Peterson. I like what he did with Philly. I like what he's done with the Jaguars. This is a big prove year, though, for sure. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right, number 12, I have the guy who I thought was the best new coach of last year, D'Amico Ryans. Definitely,
Wow.
I think he can push his way into my top 10 pretty quickly this year. I try not to be too aggressive, but yeah, I think D'Amico Ryans last year going into the season, he was my favorite of the new hires, and he proved himself in a huge way. So I have him at 12.
We finally agree on one. D'Amico Ryan
Ooh, okay.
in the 12 spot. Yeah, look, you've seen what he did with CJ Stroud with he turned around a losing record into 10-7, made the playoffs, won a game in the playoffs. So good for D'Amico Ryans. I agree with you. He could sneak into my top 10 next year, and I would be not one bit surprised.
Yeah. And then I have Peyton at 11. So falling
Uh-huh.
out of the top 10, I still think he's a good coach. I think he will actually be
Good.
better, even without
Yeah.
Russ. I mean, Russ might not have been one of the good reasons about that team last year. I think the Broncos will be a better team this year, but I still, he's 11th. And look, if it goes poorly, he could fall a lot further because last year wasn't pretty.
No, not at all. Not at all. And he looked a little outdated, Levi. I
Yeah.
hate to say it, but he did. So we'll have to see if in his second year he might have caught his footing a little bit better. At 11, now I have Kevin O'Connell.
Okay. Yeah. And we talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
that's a major. So I'm gonna spoil this a little bit. If you guys are keeping track, you probably aren't. But no, none of our discrepancies so far has been more than 8. All of the we've had 5 times we've been 8 spots off.
wow.
That's the
Look at
highest.
you. The on
Um,
the fly
yeah.
math, Levi. How you sure you
So
picked the right major there?
right. No, I mean I really can't do anything more than addition. At number 10, I have sneaking into or not sneaking
Top
into,
10.
getting
Number 10.
firmly now in the top
Yeah.
10 after last season. They were the hype team of the NFL and they proved themselves. Dan Campbell, Detroit Lions. He's a
Hmm.
top 10 coach in the NFL, which is weird to say because at the first he was introduced, everyone was mocking the guy. Freaking what was he talking about, the bootstraps
Yeah.
and
We'll,
and he proved
yeah.
himself. I
We'll
think
kick
he's a
him
top
down.
10 coach in this league, and so do
We'll
you
beat him in the
clearly.
ground. Yeah. No, I like it, Levi. I like it. I have Kevin Stefanski at 10, one of the
Okay.
better coaches in the NFL. I believe he might be a better coach than some of the guys I have. And that might be a counterintuitive because I'm doing a top 10 list here. But
Yeah.
I think it's the record, the 37-30 record that kind of deters me away from giving him even higher ranking. Look, he hasn't had a great quarterback in the NFL, but he has had capable ones. And I think his 1-2 playoff record could be improved upon. Still a great coach, still my top 10.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give my thoughts on Stefanski. I think you have him a little too low there, Drew. But at number 9, I have Nick Sirianni, who we touched on. You have him a lot lower. And
I had him up at 17.
for me, I will say this:
He was
I,
almost fired,
the
Levi.
end of
He was
last year
almost
was bad.
fired.
That's true. He was almost fired. But and I'll bring up a point about that for my next guy as well. But Sirianni, between developing the tush push, which I think legitimately changed the way that offense ran, um,
Yeah.
and between doing what he did in his first 2 years, which was taking Jalen Hurts, who nobody really believed in Jalen Hurts, and he took him all the way to the Super Bowl. And to his credit, he has made the playoffs 3 years in a row. And it's not easy. That Philadelphia plays in a, they have to deal with the Cowboys, and they've won that division. They won the division over the Cowboys. I don't know. I feel like I still view him as the best coach in that division, and I still view him as a really brilliant mind offensively because of what he did with Jalen and the tush push.
Yeah, just the way that he lost the locker room. It really
Yeah,
gets to me. I feel like that's one of the main things as a coach you have to avoid,
that's true.
and he wasn't able to do that. So, look, I understand. Something we also disagreed with is where I have this next guy, Mike McDaniel, at 9. I think
Okay,
an 8 spot difference. You had him
another
at 7.
8 spot
Yeah.
difference. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I admitted it when you said him at 17. I might be a little bit biased because of what the media says and just how cool of a guy he is. He
he
has
is
a
cool.
great
I'll give him
story,
that. Good
great
personality.
story. Went to rehab, like did all this thing, and he was an alcoholic, battled his way back in the NFL, rose through the ranks really quickly, super likable guy. And Tua Tagovailoa is not a good quarterback. If we do a quarterback rankings, which I think we will, I think I'll show you that. And I think that these next 8 guys or so I show, it's because of the quarterback that they could be this high. And Mike McDaniel, in my opinion, doesn't have that elite quarterback. I don't even think he has a good quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. With that being said, Mike McDaniel still has led the Dolphins to 2 playoff years, a winning record, and in this third year as the NFL, as the Dolphins coach, excuse me, I think it's the year where we're going to see some playoff success. So, hey, maybe I'll be proven wrong. This is my last chance I'm giving Mike McDaniel to be in the top 10 without a playoff win, though.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we may disagree a little bit about Tua, and you're right. That'll come up in the quarterback. I don't think he's a good quarterback per se, but I don't think he's a bad quarterback. But let's move on. At number 8, I have McDermott of the Bills, and my reasoning for this.
Wow.
So
Another 8 spot difference there.
this is coming from a guy who on this YouTube channel last year said the Bills should fire Sean McDermott, because I don't think he is a good fit for Buffalo specifically. I think he was great. I think he is really, really good at managing a defense, managing a locker room, because they love him in Buffalo. And I think that he's a really good players coach, but he's a little bit of a Pete Carroll aspect to him where he's really struggling to get past that. He wins his division consistently. He wins 10 games consistently. He's not getting past those top teams in the AFC. So I think he is a top 8 coach in this league because of everything that he brings to the table. But I don't think he's the right fit for the Bills. They've gone 6 years with him and Josh Allen, still have no Super Bowl ring to show for it. But I do really like him as a coach. I think that, like you said, players, huge part of it. And the players love him in Buffalo. And for good reason. He wins a lot.
Let me get this right, Levi. Sean McDermott's a top 8 coach, but you want him to be fired?
I want him to be on a different team.
It's fired. Okay.
Yes, no, but it's the same as Sirianni. I mean, if Sirianni got fired by Philadelphia, another team would have hired him, right? That doesn't Mike McCarthy got fired from Green Bay. So
yeah, and I have him at 19.
Right, but good coaches Jim Harbaugh got fired from San Francisco. I mean, good coaches get fired, but sometimes it's just not the right place, not the right fit. And eventually, things work itself out. I mean, the guy I have at number 1 got fired. I'm sure you have him at number 1 as well. So who do you have at 8?
Yeah. All right, I like it, Levi. At 8, I have the one, the only. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. Jim Harbaugh.
Okay.
In the 8th spot with the Chargers. Hey, it's a prove-it year for Harbaugh, obviously, as his first year back in the NFL, and I think he's going to prove a lot of people right. 44-19-1 in the NFL, 5-3 in the playoffs with a Super Bowl appearance.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fair. I think he could definitely get in my top 10 by the end of the year. At number 7, I have Zach Taylor, and essentially
that is astronomically too high.
For Zach Taylor, I've given him what do you have him at?
15. So another
8 point, yeah. So Zach Taylor, I'm giving him a pass for last year, because without Joe Burrow, they still had a winning record, right? Jake Browning stepped in and won some games. But I'm giving him a pass for not making the playoffs last year. And before that, the Bengals were the past 2 years before that, they were the number 2 team in the AFC. So yeah, I think Zach Taylor, I have him at 7. I think that's a fair ranking for him, personally.
Yeah, at number 7, I have Dan Campbell.
Okay.
Coach, I think I'm a big players coach type of guy, which is why I think Sirianni falls so much for me, which is why I'm giving Scott Service and MLB so much leeway, for example. Go check out the NW Sportscast, by the way, if you're just here for NFL content. We're going to have a lot more Seattle Central content over there, specifically Seahawks in the near future. So go check that out. But at 7, I have Dan Campbell, players coach through and through. Great guy. Will make sure that every player plays their heart out on the field. Super value that. So yeah, at 7, Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I don't fault you for that one. Number 6, I have Kevin Stefanski. So I really love Kevin Stefanski as a coach. I think that what he has done with the quarterbacks that he's had specifically, I mean, he went from Baker Mayfield to Deshaun Watson, who hadn't played in a few years, and then they stepped in with Joe Flacco, and making the playoffs with him. That really proved me. He's also won Coach of the Year twice in the past 3 seasons for the AFC, which I think that speaks a lot. He's good with the defense, good with the offense. Kevin Stefanski, I'm not putting him in the top 5 because he doesn't have that. All my top 5 guys are guys who have at least been to a Super Bowl. Kevin Stefanski hasn't done that, but I toyed around with it. I was like, I like Zach Taylor, but I think I like Kevin Stefanski a little bit more. So he's at number 6 for me. I'm interested to see who you have at 6 because there's 5 guys that neither of us have said, but you could spoil the fun and rank Matt LaFleur in your top 5, or if you have LaFleur at 6, I want to hear it.
Levi Coopert. I'm going to unfortunately not
Oh,
spoil the fun.
oh,
Boo.
okay,
Drew puts Matt LaFleur in the
okay,
Super.
there we go.
So I agree the top 5 guys all make a Super Bowl. I think that's kind of the criteria nowadays. Make a
Yeah,
Super Bowl, you're in the top 5. A reason why guys like Dan Campbell are out, Stefanski. I like Stefanski, by the way. I just still have him in my top 10, but I don't like him as much as you. But I have Matt LaFleur at 6. I think what he did last year with Jordan Love really propelled him from the 9 to 13 range to 6. I think that was super impressive what he got out of that team and beating the Cowboys. So I have LaFleur at 6. At 5, I'm going to jump into it, an NFC West foe. So maybe this is why I have him a little bit lower than some people, because some guys have this dude number 2, number 3 even, Kyle Shanahan at
okay,
number 5.
and I agree. I have Shanahan at 5,
Okay.
and
He's over 2
I
in the
was.
Super Bowl.
No, you're absolutely right. I was
Yeah.
very close between him and McVay. Because at first I was like, the 49ers have been better than the Rams. But I looked at the head-to-head record, and McVay dominates the 49ers.
Uh-huh.
Basically, if McVay has a healthy starting quarterback, they win. And if it's a backup for the Rams, the Niners win. But when it's a healthy Stafford, or before Stafford, a healthy
Uh,
Goff,
yeah.
the Rams, I think they had only lost once to Kyle Shanahan. So that's what tells me that McVay's a better coach. I think they're both very brilliant offensively. I have Shanahan at 5. Again, the Super Bowl loss last year maybe left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And it's the 0 for 2 Super Bowls that really kind of shine bright in headlights for me for Kyle Shanahan. So at number 4, I got Mike Tomlin for the Steelers, which might be a little, maybe not low, but I do think that Mike Tomlin has been, he's in his 18th year with the Steelers. He's won a Super
Yeah.
Bowl. He's won almost 175 games for the Steelers, but I do think, and he's super consistent. I mean, come on, this guy does not have losing records, but he just has not gotten it done. He hasn't been to the play, or he hasn't won a playoff game in what, 7 or 8 years for the Steelers?
Yeah, exactly. We're flip flopped on this, I think. I have McVay at 4, like I touched on.
Yeah.
And again, a little bit of I kind of looked at consistency there and said, look, Tomlin, yes, he hasn't won a playoff game in a while. The consistency of having a winning record, and again, I looked at the quarterbacks that he's had. Like McVay, Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford aren't necessarily legends at quarterback, but Stafford's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and Jared Goff, proved himself last year with Detroit. Mike Tomlin, the last time he won a playoff game was the last time he had a healthy Big Ben Roethlisberger. Since then, he had Mason Rudolph, he had Big Ben at age 38 and 39, who really couldn't move at all. And
Yeah.
then what was it last year? I mean, he had I can't even remember. That's a little bit on me. I should know who the Steelers quarterback was last year. It was it was the big hand.
Uh,
What's his name? The guy out of Pitt.
Pickett?
Pickett, Kenny
Pickett.
Pickett.
Yeah.
Right. And so we haven't really seen him work with a good quarterback in a long time. So I have Tomlin at 3, McVay at 4, just because McVay, I mean, he has had a couple of losing seasons
Yeah.
mixed in with 2 excellent seasons, but a couple losing seasons in there as well. So McVay 4, Tomlin 3. Do you have McVay at 3?
John Harbaugh 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we
I
go.
think Sean McVay's my 2. So
Yeah.
I think Sean McVay is, well, briefly, I'll touch on John Harbaugh first. John Harbaugh's amazing. Top 3
Yeah.
quarterback in the whole NFL. 17th year with the Ravens. He's won a Super Bowl. He won the John versus, Jim Super Bowl, which is super cool. But I think Sean McVay, just purely when I look at him, I think he's the most talented.
Well, Drew had to leave, but we both have Andy Reid at number 1. A little bit on him. Obviously, just won back-to-back Super Bowls. Hard to not have him at number 1, right? I mean, who doesn't have Andy Reid at number 1? So it is. There you go. There's our top 5. For me, it is Reid at number 1. Then Harbaugh, John Harbaugh at 2. Mike Tomlin 3, Sean McVay 4, and Kyle Shanahan 5. For Drew, he has Andy Reid at 1, Sean McVay at 2, John Harbaugh 3, Mike Tomlin 4, and Kyle Shanahan at number 5. We both have the same in the top 5. It's interesting. A lot of AFC coaches, right? Reid, Harbaugh, Tomlin. And then before that, we talked about Stefanski, who's well up there. We talked about Zach Taylor. We talked about Sean McDermott. So a lot of, and D'Amico Ryans as well. A lot of AFC coaches, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton. A lot of AFC coaches towards the top of our list. Outside of Payton and Shanahan, I have my third best NFC coach. I think I had Dan Campbell, and Drew had obviously Matt LaFleur. So yeah, I feel like it is an open question in the NFC. Who else is going to find themselves in that upper tier of coaches in the NFC? Obviously, you got McVay and Shanahan. They are on top right now. They're the ones who've been going to the Super Bowls. Who is going to challenge them atop the NFC coaches? That is my question. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is Coast to Coast Sports. Hope you enjoyed the video. Tomorrow, we'll have the tight end rankings as well as a full show for you guys. See you then.